I've hit record. We're actually technically recording right now, and I'm hitting start on this.
Ladies and gentlemen, you could not
Just a second. I'm supposed to do the intro. Remember, I do the
have
fake
picked
intro.
a better night to turn into a podcast. I mean, if you've got nothing better to do than listen to this, you've picked a great night to do that. John?
It's
Great. Anyway.
I probably shouldn't say this, but with John Bateman and Matt Steffich.
That sounded lame. Why don't you put some shoulder into that?
That's what the intro is going to be.
No, it's called. I probably shouldn't say this with John Bateman and Matt Steffich. Yeah, and then one guy says something stupid, the other guy pushes him farther. Then he says something about something, and then the next thing you know, there's lawsuits. That's what this show is all about. That's what it's all about, right there. Lawsuits, or close to them. Close to them. That's where John wants to go. Of course, I'm more moderate. I'm not as much of a Trump guy or Harper guy as John is. I'm more of a Elizabeth May meets Charles Manson kind of middle ground.
I probably shouldn't say this.
I probably should have said that.
But with John Bateman and Matt Steffich. And now, here's John Bateman and Matt Steffich.
47 years ago, we started a little show on a little radio station on a little island called Salt Spring. And it was called...
The Speakeasy.
No, it wasn't. No, it was something like that. What was it called?
The Two Daves. It was called The Speakeasy with John Bateman and Matt Steffich.
I don't remember that was the name. I think it was something... What were some other names at that time?
Of shows at
Mama
that time?
Don't Preach.
No.
The Egg Reports. We did something more like that.
We did one called, that was the natural progression after Q. We did R. We did a show called R.
What was the first name you threw out there?
The Speakeasy.
Oh, that's the one.
It was called The Speakeasy with John Bateman and Matt Steffich.
That's what I said. We did that show for 170 times.
Times 2 hours each. That was a long one.
340 hours.
Yeah.
No, 940 hours of punning.
Do you think people can tell this is unrehearsed right now?
Punning. We punned for 294 hours.
I hate puns. Puns are not my idea of good comedy.
This pun walks into a bar. He orders a drink, and the bartender hits him with a tire iron.
That's funny.
Yeah, well, it's a pun.
Somebody stoving a pun's head in with a tire iron is funny. I'll do that. I'll take that. Anyway, this is the next natural progression. This is the natural progression. This is the next logical step for you and I.
If the radio station hadn't died a sort of Titanic Hindenburg kind of death, we'd have still been over there.
It was basically picture the Hindenburg flying in and lodging itself between the Twin Towers, and then exploding and going down.
I can imagine that. I can see that.
So that's kind of what it was, and all of that mass collapses on the Titanic that happens to be parked in New York.
There's a website that claims that's exactly what happened. Is that
I know
the same?
That's one of a conspiracy website.
Yeah, it was on there the other day for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I sent them some money too. The guy seemed to...
You're supporting them.
He seemed to feel that if I sent him $1,000, that somehow that would help the conspiracy really ensconce itself.
Really?
Yeah, like really seriously ensconce.
And you did that. You
itself.
sent him money because you don't have $1,000 to spare.
It really was tight. You know, I was like, I could pay the mortgage.
Scraping
I could
it
send
together.
this guy for the Hindenburg between the Twin Towers conspiracy thing. I got to send him $1,000. What if he's right? That's what I was gambling on. Not whether my mortgage was due. My gamble was, what if he's right?
That's not unlike religion. That's half the reason I religion hop like it's nobody's business. Because what if they're right? Like what if What if Christianity's right?
I know where you're going.
What if Buddhism's right?
I know.
What if the other marginal religions are right?
Like Muslim.
What if Muslim's right?
They're not. Which they're not, by the way.
Well,
they can't all be right. Somebody's got to be more right than the other.
The bottom line is one of them's right.
I wonder who it is.
One of them's. I know that's the thing. One of them's right, and then the other 900 are wrong.
Do you think it's the Catholics?
So this is like, my whole life is religious roulette, deciding because when you go out every day, right? You step out the door, you don't know what's going to happen.
No, you don't.
And you could die. And if you prayed to God that day,
yeah, or Allah.
Well, no, that's the thing. You've chosen.
Right. What if
because they're not suckers, right?
What if he's got his head turned? What if he's texting when you walk in front of the bus?
I think that gods aren't suckers. I think if you pray to God and Allah happens to be the one, he's going to hear that. He's not going to say, "Listen, I know you prayed to me, but you prayed to God 2 minutes earlier," and then you leave and you're dead, and Allah's the one.
So,
and then all of a sudden you're spending eternity with people who have had sex with multiple partners instead of virgins.
Sorry, you lost me at people who had sex with multiple partners.
That's not my cup of tea, baby.
What if they had a religious 911 line where you called it, and any one of those guys could have answered? Muhammad, Buddha, the Pope guy, who's ever the Catholic, Jesus, I think it was
Pope
Jesus,
Francis,
and then all the rest, Jim Jones,
all
the other mainstream religions,
the real fringe ones. Like we're getting into like the this is kind of the minor leagues of religion.
912, and hello, Buddha here. Buddha, I'm. Is your house on fire? No. Fire, police, ambulance. What do you need? I need spiritual sort of.
But so in that case you're saying. So in that case you're saying that Buddha is the actual one.
No, he answered the phone because it was his shift. You could phone back 8 hours later.
Shifts.
And Jesus here.
So wait a second. So what if I pray to Jesus and I die on Buddha's shift?
Whose problem
is that? Just bad luck?
Whose problem?
That's my problem, right?
Well, if it's Buddha's shift, then you'll come back as a butterfly.
But I just prayed to Jesus, so is that my problem now?
Yes.
Or does Buddha say,
it is actually your problem.
So basically, if they're running shift work, then we don't have a chance. We don't have a hope in hell.
Unless, if the odds are, it depends what the odds come down to. If Jesus is online, you call him and you're on the bridge and you're ready to go and he answers the phone, you're going to get into a cab and go home.
I forget, when we did the pre-production talk, when we were in the green room earlier today, did we talk about, were we going to do religion? Like that, isn't that kind of just, that's kind of jumping the shark right away to get into religion like this. Because there's the two things you don't talk about, or three: religion, politics, and taxes. Are those the three things you're not supposed to talk about?
No, death.
You don't talk about death,
taxes, and Jesus.
You don't talk about those three things.
I think.
I haven't filed my taxes for a couple of years.
Yeah, you're
to be
fine.
Completely
don't
honest.
worry. I know a guy. Don't worry.
I know a guy too, but that doesn't change the fact that.
Depends which guy you know. What's his name? Bill? Is it the guy you know named Bill?
It could be William, Bill. I don't know. One of those generic names. I've got a generic name.
John.
We both. Well, yeah. Okay. Matt's better. Like we're both disciples.
No. Matthew.
I was the John.
Matthew.
I was the better disciple. Like I was. I think John was kind of the more, kind of decorated disciple.
If you were to just do it on sheer number of letters in the alphabet, you got 4, I got 6.
Well, you think that's the way you think that's the way it works?
I don't know. God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, if we're on God's shift at that particular time, I agree.
Is this Matt or Matthew? It's Matthew, actually. God.
Yeah. So basically, this is our new show. That's it.
I don't like
it's
this
over.
show. This show.
You know what? It's funny. It doesn't seem that different. It's kind of like
the old show was worse. I'll give it that. The only thing this show is going for it is the old show was just so much worse.
Well, the old show's different. That one thing that I do, and I got in a lot of trouble for this in the past, that I berated and put down our listeners a lot, who you always insisted on calling viewers.
I referred to them as viewers, and also off air as the little people.
But you call it viewers, but then you went in this whole theater of the mind.
Yeah, well, I see them as viewers. I see them now as they're watching this podcast.
Yeah, but okay, that's where we had a problem. But let's not get into that. So basically, we had this last one, and the last show lasted 2 hours. We did 2 hours of live radio.
Didn't I just say that last show sucked?
Okay, but what I'm saying, the problem is now, even since then, since we left that show, 2 years ago?
At least. Maybe I got out of rehab 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I did. There was the murder thing.
Yeah. The hobo.
The homeless period.
We were.
Yeah, 2.5 years ago.
Yep, they split us up in rehab. Remember, we went in there together and they split us up. They wouldn't let us sit together in rehab.
Talk about ripping apart the Captain and Tennille. I mean, that was what they did there. That was
exactly. And you looked wonderful in that dress.
I felt good.
Well, I think it made you feel like you're real you, but we're not getting into Kate. I'm not getting into Kate Jenner right now. Believe me,
Caitlin.
We'll do a month of those shows at some point. But it's just too easy. You know, we usually don't like to go and shoot ducks in a barrel. It's just too easy. But what I'm saying is this is a podcast. This is
ducks in a barrel?
Yeah, this is a very different animal.
Is it like ducks?
In a barrel. Like ducks in a barrel are basically just as screwed as fish are, because once a duck's in a barrel, duck needs a little bit of distance to take off, right? And it's a barrel's not taking off. It's just sitting there. It's not getting out.
Now, the Mythbusters actually did, one of the myths they did was shooting a fish in a barrel.
But was it like and
apparently it's not as simple as it looks.
But it must have been a ballistics gel fish. Like they would never shoot a real fish on that TV show. I don't know.
They had some like one of those toilet snakes, you know, those things they run down toilets. It was like that. And they ran electricity through it, so it was moving around, and then they shot a gun into it. But apparently, upshot is, it's not that simple to shoot a fish in a barrel. They don't want to be shot. They're looking up. There's a 12 gauge,
and bullets don't go that far into water,
and they kind of wobble a bit as well,
and they kind of stop after like 2 or 3 inches.
But if it's a barrel, it's not a lot of room to sort of, you know, you got to do a little.
Which brings me to my point. Our listeners.
Simple and small as they are,
nothing to do with my point. Our past listeners, and I hope none of you from the past are listening now, because we didn't. I assume they're not listening. We didn't like them, right, Matt? We didn't get along with them.
Well, not in public. I like the little people while I'm on the air, but when I run into with thrifties,
it's like, why are you talking to me?
Yeah. I loved your show the other night, man.
Yeah.
Like,
great.
You.
Yeah.
You know?
So basically, this is a podcast, and these listeners have really short attention spans. So we have to go from 2 hours down to basically 30, 40 minutes maximum.
30. They've already left now.
You're hardcore on 30. Like you're saying 30. I'm saying 35. We were arguing before the show.
30 minutes if they're high. 27 minutes if they're drunk, and 12 minutes if they're religious.
What if they're like stone cold straight? Let's
3 minutes tops.
Stone cold straight. They have no religion.
1 minute.
Okay. Well, wait a second. Okay, straight. Okay, and I'm not talking about sexually. I'm talking straight. Okay, they're stone cold. They are sober. Okay, and they.
How long would they listen to this show?
But wait a second. They're not religious, but they're spiritual. Then how long would they listen to this show for?
Hold on, I need a little more information.
Yeah.
Are they sexually satisfied while they're listening to the show, or are they sexually frustrated?
Okay, then let me. I'm sorry to add, but to get clarification on that question, I have to ask you another question. Are they married? Are they married?
I gotta think anyone married isn't listening to this show.
Well, and I'm thinking anybody married that is listening to this show isn't sexually satisfied.
No, I read about this guy once it was in a book called The Hobbit, and he was banging all the time. Because it just seemed like I want to go to that place.
We all want to go and live in Middle Earth. I read The Hobbit. The Hobbit was a digestible book. The Hobbit was something that you could read. Yeah. I don't remember this Bilbo sowing his wild oats chapter that you're talking. I don't remember that happening.
It was one of the sequels. I think who was that? Samuel Jackson. Who was the guy that?
Yes,
the New Zealand guy. Jackson. The New Zealand guy did all the Lord of the Rings stuff.
That's
wasn't it Samuel
Peter Jackson? Peter Jackson did it all.
Okay.
So what does he have to do with that? Because it wasn't in the movies.
No, he took a lot of that out. He did a lot of creative editing.
Yeah,
and a lot of the overt sexual scenes,
the sexual content
that was in The Hobbit was eradicated because of this so-called Peter Jackson film.
You know, like speaking of Kate, we've come a long way with what people are. I hate to use the word tolerant, but what people are accepting of.
I never liked that word.
And Kate is one of them. Like Bruce Jenner becoming Kate is one of them.
Caitlin.
I don't think they're ready for Hobbit sexual activity of any kind. That's simply. I don't think society is there. I think Tolkien was ahead of his time. Tolkien. I think he was ahead of his time.
He just had a couple of initials for a first name.
J.R.R. He had 3 initials.
He had 3?
J.R.R.
Oh.
The 2 R's I think it was like John Robert. I think it was the same name twice because he had his maternal and his paternal grandfather both named Robert. A pretty common name back then.
And his name was John. Yeah, great.
John Robert Tolkien, probably something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Tolkien sounds Yiddish or Lebanese.
Don't care.
Yeah.
Don't really care. Well, I mean, you know.
No, fine, I hear what you said.
I'll tell you this: the guy could write a hell of a movie. I'll give him
Jackson?
that. No, Tolkien. I mean,
he didn't write movies; he wrote books, and then guys like Peter Jackson bastardized them and stuffed them into movie form, where hobbits were killing Shadowfaxes, and it was terrible. It was.
You know, I suggest that you read. If I could give you a recommendation, read the book. Okay, because I'm not after this conversation. I'm not convinced you have.
What were those creatures in the Harry Potter book? The ones are all.
You're moving your hands kind of like dolphins.
They were like come out of
playing
nowhere,
with one another.
They were all violent.
Ghosts or something?
Yeah, they were ghost kind of creatures. They were in Harry Potter. You never watched Harry Potter?
I read the first couple chapters of the Harry Potter, and you want to know what? The tapestry was almost too rich. You know what I'm saying? It was
a little too much cream in that tapestry.
It was just too rich. It was kind of like, you know, when you sit down. You remember one of the first cups I worked for you for a spell, and you remember the day that I ate that donut.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Inhaled.
No, it was like a Boston cream donut.
You didn't eat it. You inhaled it.
Well, I didn't eat it fast, but I think I kind of it was intimate. It's like it kind of like had hobbit sex with that donut. Like it was a Boston cream, which I don't really consider to be an official donut. I think donut has to have a hole in it. But anyway, I ate that, and it was just it was really rich. And when I was done, I felt like, wow, that was too much. That was too much donut. And that's kind of what, when I read Harry Potter,
you felt it was too much donut.
I just felt it was she spun too much of a rich tapestry.
She used to be homeless, you know. Like she was a single mom, you know, and I'm sure for a good reason.
Yeah, she probably got.
But she
booted.
showed him.
Yeah, well, we rarely. I've never heard his side of the story. I don't even know who he is. But somewhere in J.K. Rowling's life, and once again, 2 initials. I think her name is John.
Yeah,
Caitlin Rowling. What is with the initials? I guess if you want to be a successful author, you go initial.
J.R. Tolkien, K.R. Ross.
And the guy who did Game of Thrones is something.
P.Q.
I think he's a J.R.R. too, but I forget what his last name is now. Whatever. J.R.R. Thrones, I guess.
Poor guy. His parents didn't care. Why did they call him Sue? Why didn't they just... I'm going to name you Sue.
Anyway, I've got no idea why we were talking about Harry Potter.
It doesn't matter. The main thing is that everyone lived happy. We were talking about the Hobbit, the sexual appetite of hobbits. I think if we were...
Which I still think you might have created. I think that was like...
They didn't touch on it in the film as much as I thought they should have.
But you see, I don't think they touched on it in the book. And what I think is maybe you got into some hobblerotica. You did it yourself. You wrote it yourself and
hold on there, big boy,
and stuck it in there yourself.
You can't just come into a middle of a movie and just sit down and go, I better catch up. What's going on here? Hobbits. How did hobbits come to be?
Well, the same way that
how did hobbits come to be?
Sexual intercourse.
Right,
of course.
So there had to be some sort of consensual, most hopefully, hobbit on hobbit.
Like, you're not supposed to say that.
You know, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. I can't believe what kind of people would be offended by that. Anyway, so I'm just saying I wish they had touched a little more on that.
I don't think they...
50 Shades of Hobbit.
I don't think they should have to touch on... I think there's a lot of stuff that could just be left implied, and basically how Frodo was conceived maybe could be left to our deep, dark imaginations.
So you can't imagine a scene where Bilbo Baggins comes home. Well, how was the forest area, honey?
How was the forest?
Well, that Gollum, I'll tell you, he's really something. And Shadowfax again, and Gandalf. Well, there was a big anyway. So what are you doing later, baby? You don't see that?
Yeah.
Why didn't they at least try to depict that, even tastefully?
In the book, or because I'm sure Tolkien probably has some stuff tucked aside.
I'm sure somebody said to Tolkien at a dinner party, you know, I read your book. Oh, I really appreciate that. I really liked it. I mean, you're amazing. But how do they procreate?
Well, it's obvious.
How do hobbits?
It's obvious that hobbits just like they're called halflings, right? So they're basically like little humans. So there'd be hobbit penis, hobbit vagina. going on. There's got to be. Like, look how they're built. It's not like they're a Star Trek character.
Yeah, who are androgynous.
Like you don't know. I assume with Star Trek, like most of their their foreheads, like they're all different.
Yeah,
in their forehead, basically, right? So they all have different maybe mating rituals. I mean, I don't know. They got legs. I assume if a creature basically has a crotch, then it's basically they're playing the same game we are.
All right, I never thought of that. But a Klingon and say a Vulcan.
Yep. Like you wouldn't believe.
What are you doing after the bar closes?
Exactly.
Well, and then they get home and their sexual organs are mismatched.
I don't think so, because I think
I've never thought about the sexual organs of a Vulcan, but
humans and Vulcans for sure.
Now that you've brought it up,
humans and Vulcans for sure were able to mate, because that's what Spock was. He was half human, half Vulcan.
And the only way he was to be half human, half Vulcan is if his mom and dad
made donkey sounds. So
the only way that you can get a half human, half Vulcan to anything is to do the old nasty.
You're trying to say if they make donkey sounds.
Well, not so much donkey
or if they're
sounds
sawing
as such.
rickety. I don't know. It's just like when I envisioned our first podcast,
this wasn't what you envisioned.
No, was it what you envisioned? Because you're the only one right now with a piece of paper. You got a piece of paper there, and yeah, there it is. And Matt and I, we basically our pre-production discussion here when we got together with the producers, of which there's 7 standing right in the room with us right now,
literally right behind Mel Brooks.
Yeah,
good to see you. You're looking great.
So they didn't anticipate this either. We were supposed to talk about something completely different.
Well, we just wanted to let you know we're back. We never really were away. I mean, if you'd ever walked into my gallery and John was there and I was there,
to be there.
It's hard to listen to. I find it hard to listen to.
To us.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't have the luxury of seeing us together in public much.
I like the choice of word luxury.
Yeah.
The luxury of seeing us.
It's kind of more of a delicacy. It's like having a crab. Right?
Which is better than having crabs. Unless you're at a party where they have a multitude of crabs.
Listen. Okay. No. What are you talking about? What kind of party are you talking about? If I know what you're talking about, you're mentioning crabs. We're kind of beating around the bush here, but what we're talking about is pubic lice. Is that what you're talking about?
Just a second. Hold on a sec.
Because at least that
means I like more than to hear that phrase, pubic lice.
Well, listen. At least that means you've scored. Like you could look at it as a bit of a trophy, an STD like that. It's kind of a bit of a trophy.
It's not an STD as such.
Well, it's different.
It's like a leech.
It's
like you go into the Cushion Lake and you walk out and
it's an STD. It's an STI. It's like sexually transmitted insect or something. Isn't it?
Yes, it is. Okay. I don't think they have a category for that.
Well, they do now.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, they do now. So I think that's kind of, you got to look at that, Well, oh my God, you got crabs? Well, that means you got lucky.
Yeah.
Right? Assuming.
Yeah. I was down at the Balmoral at Hastings in Maine. I met this really sweet girl, really few issues, but really sweet. And then the next day I had the fishing boats circling me trying to harvest my...
You, sort of.
Yeah.
Is that a metaphorical fishing boat?
Well, crabs.
I got you. But do you mean...
I probably should have said
pubic lice. That's what you meant, right? That's the problem with metaphor. You've never been strong on it.
I don't get metaphor. It's like nature deficit disorder. I don't get it. I don't.
Nature deficit disorder is pretty easy to explain.
Is it like lactose intolerant where you drink milk and then it works
gives
against
you
your
diarrhea?
System? Yeah. Is that like nature deficit disorder?
I think what nature deficit disorder implies that if you don't spend enough time in nature, right, you're gonna basically grow up to be a complete failure. Like you're gonna be a loser and a failure. I think that's the implication.
A friend of mine's dad is a big practitioner of this. I don't know if he's for it or against it. I think he's for nature.
Yeah.
If I read the articles, and he thinks that if kids nowadays, they're all tied in with their fancy, cell phones and touchscreen phones and phones.
Yeah.
And that they can't go outside and see a bald eagle without going, oh, I better look that up on my phone.
Well, are you
Is
not?
that how it works? I don't even know how it works. Am I supposed to rub an eagle against my arm and it absorbs?
Okay, tell everybody. Assume we're starting cold here. Tell everybody where you grew up.
I grew up in the enclave of East Vancouver.
East Vancouver. Okay, so for me, that's a really, 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 really scary place. Don't mistake it for East Hastings.
No, it's
not.
It's not
It's
Detroit.
a different place.
It's not Watts in L.A. or it's not Detroit.
You're kind of in a cultural M&M bowl.
Yeah,
You're pretty rich culturally.
Yeah,
and diverse income structure. Are you mostly basically working class, blue collar, working Joe?
Well, let's just put it this way: if you grew up in East Vancouver and your dad wasn't dealing drugs,
Yeah.
you didn't make it.
Did your dad deal drugs?
I'm turning 57 this year.
Did your dad deal drugs?
Yeah.
Because
Do you need some?
your dad was like a long haul trucker.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if you're going to deal drugs, that's.
Jeez, John.
So I think it's pretty simple to say.
You grew up in Dartmouth?
Well, listen, it's pretty obvious to say. We grew up in very different environments. Because I grew up until I was 10. Should I tell the whole story?
Is this the one where you grew up in a test tube?
No,
I grew 10.
I grew up when I was 10. I grew up up to the age of 10.
And that's where you stopped.
In a very bucolic, yeah.
And now you're 46 and you're still 10.
47.
Oh, sorry.
In a very bucolic environment in Ontario. Pastoral.
And by colic, you mean on the inside of a locker at a Greyhound depot?
No, bucolic.
Oh.
Anyway, just, forested.
Oh, yeah. You got to get leaves, streams, creeks.
Leaping through meadows. So if I had any disorder, it was nature surplus disorder.
Oh.
Right. So from then, when I was 10, I moved to Dartmouth.
Sorry, where?
Dartmouth, Nova Scotia.
M-U-T-H.
Yeah, sure. And trust me, people, you'll get to understand that whole thing later. But in Dartmouth, when I moved there, it was in 1977, right? It was just after basically they dropped the bomb.
Yeah,
on Dartmouth, right?
in Hiroshima.
Yeah, well, no, on Dartmouth.
Oh.
It seemed like it anyway.
Which bomb was that?
The Halifax explosion. Let's just say
that was
it was
1918, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe a few years later.
Yeah, okay.
I was there just a few. They were still cleaning up.
It was one big
There's still
bomb.
like anchors strewn all over the place,
I
right?
bet there would be.
Anyway, I grew up I remember we moved to this new house. It was like built in 1870.
Yeah.
And it was a piece of trash.
Jeez.
And being essentially the person I was, I cried and cried and cried.
You're crying as we speak.
I can barely hold tears back right now. So is it Dartmouth or Dartmouth?
I got to look that up on Google. Keep going.
Okay, Dartmouth. At that time, wasn't that different than East Van? There was a lot of, where I lived, there was a lot of bad kids around.
Were you violated physically by some of these kids?
Probably. I don't. These are definitions that we can get into the intricacies of the definition of being violated.
Okay. Anyway, go on. So it was tough neighborhood, tough crowd.
Yeah.
School newspaper had an obituary column.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
The weekly school bulletin had an obituary column.
After the football team sacked the quarterback, they went after his family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I close?
I don't know. Did you get in with a bad crowd?
I got kicked out of Catholic school at the end of grade 10.
Because Jesus was on shift at that point.
Let's just say me and Jesus didn't get along.
Yeah, okay. Well, so why did you get kicked out of Catholic school? Have you ever told me this?
Ironically, it wasn't because I didn't believe in Jesus, which I didn't and or don't.
Okay. Yeah, you've been pretty clear on that in the past.
But this school of 500 was a formidable football school.
This is kind of like the Notre Dame.
Notre Dame High School was a Louis Passagle, who went on to play with the BC Lions, was the quarterback of the winning team that the Notre Dame Jugglers.
He was a quarterback back then?
He was a quarterback.
Because he must have sucked because he became a kicker later.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
And he did win the Grey Cup.
He won a couple of them probably. Who knows? I mean, who knows?
Which is probably the most who cares if you won it trophy.
No, I think if you won the Brier.
Yeah, the Briar. Yeah,
that'd be even worse.
Yeah,
the Grey Cup.
I give you that.
Oh, you won the Briar. No, I actually won the Grey Cup. Ooh.
Okay. Well,
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Do you think the Grey Cup's below the Briar?
I love the Briar.
I just like the sound of the Briar.
Sweep.
Anyway, if you won anything at a Bonspiel, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and if it is a Briar,
keep going. So
I got thrown out. Because I wouldn't play football. They didn't so much care. They didn't so much care about the religion. They would go, "You don't buy into God?" No, I think God's a funny man in the sky. And they'd go, "Yeah, how do you feel about football?" I go, "I'm not really into football."
But you're a sizable gentleman. Like, you're a good sized fella.
Thank you very much.
You're like, what, 6'2", 6'3"?
Oh, I thought you meant.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I am 6'2", or 6'3", 6'2".
Yeah.
230-ish if on a windy day with the wind in my back. I'm 230.
Yeah.
So maybe 240.
Okay, so anyway.
But I'm well put together. That's
so of course they wanted you to play football.
Yeah,
you know, you're probably strapping. You probably would have been a strapping young lad back then.
Throw it to me. I'd run down the field. Throw it to me, and they'd throw it to me, and I'd win the.
You would have lost interest by the time, from when the quarterback had left his hand to when it reached your hand.
I would have up the stands. Yeah, I would have up the nature. Just the deficit disorder thing would have. Out in a field like that with the green, it wasn't. Yeah. Anyway, you get the idea.
Yeah, I think I do get the idea.
Yeah. Well, that was then. This is now. And one thing I can tell you, John, is that sorry, what was I saying?
I have no idea. That was.
What a great show this has been. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning into a fantastic time. Just a great show.
That's it. Basically, I mean, this is new for us too.
We got a bunch of emails tonight and a bunch of telegrams.
Oh, really? Did you want to read those?
I don't think we have time. I think we have to wait till next week.
We're flushed out of time because our listeners, who you call viewers,
or the little people.
Yeah, they don't have the patience to listen to any more right now.
Nor do I blame them. I thank you. I appreciate the fact that you have as little life as we have, and that you're willing to spend some of that with us.
Well, you've been listening to, I probably shouldn't say this, but podcast with John Bateman and Matt Steffich. If you want to check out our webpage, ipsstb.com, or I probably shouldn't say this, but.com. Don't get confused by the apostrophe. There's no apostrophe in the web address.
I wouldn't put one in.
But ipsstb.com. You think that sounds like one of those jokes?
Do we have a Facebook page?
IP Nightly. Yeah, there's a Facebook page. Just look up, I probably shouldn't say this, but on Facebook, and like us and share us.
You'd be stupid not to. And don't be stupid.
And we'll be back 1 week from tonight.
Will we back or black?
We'll be back in black 1 week from tonight.
And wait till you see who's written us telegrams and electro mails and Instagrams. We've got some Instagrams from... Just come back.
They'll be back. Thanks for listening.